Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's Process Monitor and Search Committee training, where we will review the role of the Process Monitor, as well as the Search Committee process, laws relevant to it, and how you can be a part of it. Before we get into all that, let's take a look at discrimination laws relevant to our Search Committee process, specifically federal laws such as Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, the Federal Americans with Disability Act, and state laws such as the Fair Employment Housing Act, Government Code Section 12940, and also relevant are the enforcement agencies of these laws, including the EEOC and the California Civil Rights Department, which you may know from its previous name as the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. When we're conducting recruitments, we need to make sure that we are doing so in accordance with the law. So let's review some regulations relevant to that. An employer or other covered entity shall not, unless pursuant to permissible defense, engage in any recruitment or activity that restricts, excludes, or classifies individuals on a basis enumerated in the Act, expresses a preference for individuals on a basis enumerated in the Act, or communicates or uses advertising methods to communicate the availability of employment benefits in a manner intended to discriminate on a basis enumerated in the Act. So we're not going to be discriminating based on any protected status. And we're also going to be complying with the Equal Employment Opportunities regulations that are set forth in Title V. Those are going to be things like this district must adopt a policy statement on equal opportunity, must adopt Equal Employment Opportunity Plan, must report annually to the Chancellor's Office, must establish an advisory committee, must create job requirements with the understanding of diverse factors for the college community, and must have screening and selection procedures to ensure applicants demonstrate understanding of diverse factors. So a lot of these you'll notice at the top are going to be things related to our DEOC committee, and other things are going to be related to why we have diversity questions as a part of our screening process, and we'll talk about those later in this training. So let's talk about the basics of committee work. Before the first meeting, we want to make sure that our group that will be conducting the search committee includes a variety of members, diverse group from across campus, from a variety of constituencies. So please try to have a different person on these committees and not the same person from each constituency group sitting on every committee. The goal is to make sure that all voices on campus have an opportunity to be heard. Once you get to that first committee meeting, you're going to select a committee chair, work together to determine minimum qualifications and interview questions. You will determine if a minimum qualifications subcommittee will be created. If you decide to do so, who will serve on that committee? And please note that there's only one minimum qualifications subcommittee, regardless of the number of the applicants. You'll also need to select dates for future meetings to review the applicant scores and interview the candidates. An important thing to note, and this is non-negotiable, all committee members must attend all meetings. We recognize it can be hard to get everyone from different constituency groups to be together for an hour or even all day for the interviews, but every committee member must attend every meeting. As you work together to develop interview questions, please note that whatever questions that are agreed upon by the committee will need to be approved by HR before the committee is granted access to the applications. And this is done to prevent the committee from tailoring the questions or the process to a specific candidate. A question regarding diversity must be asked, and we recommend that you utilize the job announcement to develop the questions. Please note that a presentation or teaching demonstration is allowed. Role play scenarios are not. Those are times when you might say, pretend I'm a student that's interrupting class, and then someone on the committee acts like a student who is out of control and wants to see how the interviewee will react, and the search committee member will then react to that. That would be a role play scenario that is not permitted, but you are free to have the interviewee do a 20-minute presentation on how they would teach a class, or give a PowerPoint on an area that's relevant to this particular search. Please only ask professional questions. We do not care what their favorite movie is or what the last book they read was. We're looking for someone who is the best person for this role, not our new best friend. Please avoid any questions regarding personal beliefs or protected status. Those would be things like, where did you live growing up? Will you need personal time off for a particular religious holiday? Are you comfortable working for a female boss? Things of that nature. We want to focus on questions related to the job, which is why we recommend you utilize the job announcement to develop your interview questions. Please know that it is the obligation of every committee member to review every application. We recognize that this is time-consuming, but just as it is required to attend all meetings, this is part of the work of being on a committee. You may determine as a committee that you would like to put a testing instrument into place. This could be a typing test, some sort of other computer-based or physical test to ensure that they can do the job. If you determine as a committee you would like to do so, please ensure that this testing instrument is job-related and determine how this is going to be effectuated. Will this be given to people ahead of time? Will technology be used? Who is going to provide it? And make sure this is worked into the time allotment when you interview candidates. If the candidate has 30 minutes with the search committee and they need 30 minutes for the testing portion, how is that going to be done? Also make sure you've decided how it will be scored and the overall weight it will have for their search. All right, part 2, the interview. In-person searches need to include attentive committee members in a distraction-free environment. We want to make sure that this interviewee feels that they have everyone's full attention during their interview. Zoom interviews should only occur when absolutely necessary, but will need to include all members using both the voice and video capabilities of Zoom. We cannot have search committee members with their cameras off. In between interviews, we recommend not discussing the candidates until everyone has scored the applicant. Do not discuss candidates within earshot of another candidate. Sometimes you have people waiting in a hall or a nearby lobby and they may be able to hear your conversations. And do not advocate for or against a candidate. We want to talk about their answers and their qualifications. So we want to say, this person I feel gave the best answer because they addressed every part of the prompt, they gave relevant examples. Not for them as a person per se. We're looking for who is the most qualified for this position. Committee work, the deliberations and recommendations. So once you've interviewed all the candidates, you want to ensure the committee has adequate time to tabulate their scores. People with the highest scores should be recommended for the next level if there is a next step. We recommend putting forward at least 3 candidates. Now, during this process, sometimes during deliberations there's discussions, people can feel differently. Please note that committee members may modify their scores if they feel it's warranted. This can be where someone says, well, I didn't give candidate X very many points because they didn't answer all the prompts. And maybe another committee member says, no, they did. I actually wrote them down. They answered part 1, 2, and 3. That first person may feel like, oh, I just missed it. I'll go ahead and give them more points. That is allowed. However, you cannot force somebody to go ahead and change their score. So if there is a power disparity, if there is both a supervisor and someone who reports them on the committee, they can't force their person that reports to them to change their score. You can modify scores if someone decides it's appropriate based on discussion, but no one can be made to change their score. We ask that you are evaluating the candidates on their application, their interview, only things that are relevant to the job that were part of the official process. We know that sometimes concerns get raised during deliberations about, well, this person lives 100 miles away. They're not going to want to drive in every day. Or other things that are unrelated to their interview, their application. those parts of the job search process. Do not let those things be a part of the deliberations. Those things about where they live or things going on in their personal life, those are for the candidate to decide if they're deal breakers or whether or not they want to take the job. Just decide based on the quality of their application and materials. You'll then complete the committee recommendation form that will be in your packet. Next, we're going to talk about norming, and this is relevant to the applications and the interviews that you'll be looking at. So norming is the practice of ensuring that all committee members have a common understanding of criteria and the related assessments. It's very similar to an answer key that an instructor has to an essay exam. This ensures everyone is being graded by the same criteria, regardless of who is doing the grading. This does not take away from the committee's ability to score, rank, and refer candidates. It works to ensure parity and is a tool against bias. So to look at bias real quick, we want to talk about a few different kinds of bias and how they can come into play in the search process. There can be affinity bias, which is feeling a connection of those similar to us. A perception bias, stereotypes and assumptions about different groups. Halo effect, where we're projecting positive qualities onto people without actually knowing them. And confirmation bias, looking to confirm our own opinions and pre-existing ideas. And the way this can play out in a search is in reviewing an application. We can see somebody worked at a company that we may feel is prestigious and think, oh, they must be a strong candidate if they work there. And we already like them. So when we see they were only there for 3 months, we just tell ourselves there's a good reason that they were only there a few months. I'm sure there was something going on. And affinity bias. Oh, I also completed that program. It was really hard, so they must be really intelligent. Groupthink. Well, my managers think so, and they're on this committee, and assuming that then for that person knows what's best. Also a stereotype bias. If someone studied a particular institution, that must mean that they're a good fit for the role because they must be smart. These are all assumptions that are being made based on a resume when we don't know any additional facts about this person, such as why they left the company, if they went to that university because they were intelligent, or if they were really good at a sport that institution was looking to succeed in. We've filled in the gaps based on what we think about this person from their resume. There's also disparate impact considerations. Those are policy procedures that inadvertently negatively impact one group of people more than others. These can be things like a height, age, or weight requirement that may exclude men or women, or gaps in employment or prior experience that can exclude parenting individuals. We want to be sure we're thinking about unconscious bias. It's bias that we are unaware of. It happens automatically and is influenced by our background and experience. There's also the first impression effect, making a decision about a candidate within the first few minutes of the interview instead of evaluating the candidate on the entire interview. This can be when the candidate walks in and trips and spills something on themselves and you think, oh my gosh, this person can't even walk in a room. We need to give people a little grace. Maybe they're nervous, and maybe that's not relevant to how absolutely qualified they are for the role, and to recognize that just because they made a bad first impression does not mean that they aren't highly qualified. Before we jump back into norming, I want to talk for a moment about faculty equivalency, which will be a different process than those for the management or classified positions. For faculty hiring, questions regarding minimum qualifications do need to go through the Hiring Standards Committee. The Hiring Standards Committee will, upon request of a faculty selection committee or department chair, consider requests from candidates for faculty positions who claim equivalency to the minimum qualifications and local standards. The committee will determine whether a claim of equivalency is equivalent to the required qualifications in both general and specialized subject matter knowledge. Again, this is limited to faculty positions, so please refer those to the Equivalency Committee. You can find their contact information for the current members online, but we can still utilize norming for faculty positions when it comes to interview questions. And now let's jump back for some examples for other positions. So let's look at some examples of norming and why it's needed. So minimum qualifications will be posted with all the positions. So here we have min quals, and they require a master's degree in counseling, psychology, student personnel, or related field, and a minimum of 1 year of leadership, formal training, or internship, or experience reasonably related to this administrative assignment. Okay, master's degree and some experience. Now, I have a question. It requires master's in a related field, but what is a related field to those things? Is sociology related? Liberal studies? Human services? Educational leadership? So as a committee, before you look at the applications, you need to decide, well, these are the minimum qualifications. What will we say is a related field? That way everyone on the committee is on the same page and is scoring things in a similar fashion. You can all feel differently about how many points you're going to award for things, but you've all decided what's a related field or a way to determine what is a related field. You also want to talk about how you will count for internships or things of less than a year. Will you be giving half points, or if they don't have a full year of experience, is that 0 points? Things that the committee can decide, but they need to decide as a group and have a consensus on. All right, this minimum qualification is a master's in humanities or the equivalent. What is the equivalent of a master's degree in humanities? The committee can get together and decide. That way, as you review the applications and the minimum qualifications of each candidate, you'll know what you're looking for, and if you have decided there's equivalent to a master's degree in humanities. Here's some other ones, just food for thought. This first one requires a bachelor's degree, again in a related field. Also, the ability to become a subject matter expert on all program details. The bottom one requires graduation from high school, a GED, or any combination of education, training, or experience that provides the required knowledge, skills, and ability. So you have to decide, is there really a minimum qualification there for education? How will the committee decide who has met that requirement? So this one requires 4 years of current salon experience. And as you can see, you're asking for positives and concerns. One thing we want to focus on is the current salon experience. We talked about disparate impact and things that can have a greater effect on some groups than others. What are they looking for current salon experience? If I've been out of work for a year due to an injury, but I was previously working in a salon for 10 years, why would that experience not be relevant and let me go past min quals in this? So if there's something specific that you're looking for that would be current, put that requirement. That they must be up to date on all new techniques, enlisted techniques, or must know how to use this machine or do this process. So think about those things as you go through this process. And if you're involved in writing job announcements, it's something else to consider. I do want to highlight something else they did, which is for the experience they laid out what would be considered. That 1 year of experience is equal to 12 months of experience at 40 hours a week. Applicable part-time experience will be converted to the full-time equivalent for purposes of meeting the experience requirement. They have essentially normed the experience portion for the committee so that everyone's on the same page and knows what this 1 year of experience needs to be. So here's an idea of what a resume can look like as the scoring portion. So we look at a resume and how do we actually norm that and score it? It can look like this. If it's something regarding customer service, they get a 0 for no experience. They get a 1 for 1 year or less, a 2 for 1 to 2 years, and a score of 3 for 3 years or more. And when you're looking for actual skills, this can be a way to decide how you're going to score that. So if an applicant has to have experience using various systems, this is how we're going to give them points. It's going to be based on either the number of databases or the level of user someone is, because that will demonstrate that they have additional skills and abilities within those databases. So this is something the committee would develop together to decide how many points things would be worth, and creates a general consensus within the committee. Another example, whether you're scoring based on the years of experience or finding a way to put types of experience into scoring boxes, such as whether they have written basic reports or at 3 points, they have 3 or more years, or has created reports for wide external dissemination. So those are ways to think that the committee can utilize those VIN quals and what they're looking for and determine how to score the applicant resumes accordingly. Norming is also needed for the questions. It can be especially helpful when this role that you're hiring for has skills that are, as it sits at the top, a very particular set of skills. Some examples. Describe your process for conducting a routine inspection of a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. As you know, at Cerritos College, we have a variety of constituency groups that sit on committees. There may be people sitting on the committee who have no experience with HVAC systems. By norming the answers to these questions, you're not only going to help the committee reach a consensus on what a good answer is and what a bad answer is, but it's going to assist those on the committee who may not have the background to know what a good answer looks like. This is going to be similar for some of the other questions. Please describe your methodology in reconciling accounts. What did you reconcile and how often? Someone on the committee who does not have a background in accounting or finance may not know what a good or bad answer to this question is. Norming helps to regulate that. How do you determine the appropriate irrigation needs for different plants and areas? Again, without a background in landscaping, you may be lost in knowing what an answer to this should look like. In a general chemistry qualitative analysis lab, students use concentrated sulfuric acid. What safety measures should be taken before beginning the lab? What would you do if a student drops a test tube with a few milliliters of sulfuric acid and it breaks and splatters? This is not a question that everybody may know the correct answer to, and norming is going to get us there. So let's take that question further. The way you can norm a question like this is to talk as a committee and decide what an exceptional answer would be and what an essentially absent answer would be. You don't have to necessarily give a script, but essentially what generally we're looking for. In this case, an exceptional answer, they've given a step-by-step instruction of safety beforehand, how they would respond to the incident, documentation, etc. A poor answer is going to be vague, they kind of stumble over it, they don't really give any specifics, and everything in between. So this way, each person has the ability to score as they see fit, but we've given a general rubric so that hopefully we don't have one person on the committee scoring a 0 and one giving somebody a 5 for the same answer for the same applicant. We have some guardrails in place, and each person can decide where it falls within that. All right, another question. Please summarize your approach to teaching, insert course title here. How do you teach the course? So as a committee, decide what you're looking for. Maybe you want to see the committee member, as a committee member, you want to see them talk about course expectations, how they pace the class, the rationale behind assignments or texts. Maybe you want to hear them talk about SLOs. Those are the things you can be looking for, and you can develop a rubric to determine that so that everyone can score as they see fit, but that there's a consensus among what a 10 and 0 answer would look like. And again, you're able to decide how you want to score. If things will be on a 0 to 5, 0 to 10, that is up to the committee. As you'll see, some of these examples have both the 0 to 10, 0 to 5, and 0 to 3 scale. All right, a teaching demonstration. What are you looking for out of this? If you're asking someone to discuss the role of media or social media in American politics, what does a good presentation look like? Do you want to see them cover the material thoughtfully, show that they're well-versed? Maybe you want to see them use some of the technology. Are they engaging? Whatever the committee decides, that's fine, but we want to see some consensus and hopefully a general rubric like this to ensure everyone's on the same page. As mentioned earlier, we do need a diversity question. It's required under Title V. Here's an example. Cerritos College is a diverse institution, both in terms of our student and employee populations. Please describe your experience in working with diverse populations and how it has informed or changed your approach to and it can be your work or pedagogy. These are important questions to norm. As a committee, we need to know what you're looking for when you're going to be scoring this. Talk about what a 1 answer would look like and what a 5, or the highest that you have decided to go, whether that's a 10 or a 20, would look like. So in this question, we're going to give some sample responses. If someone says, I have worked at a lot of diverse places, including the city of Long Beach and the city of Stockton. On a 1 to 5 scale, what does that look like? What about applicant B? I grew up in a diverse household and I'm used to being around people with different identities. I treat everyone the same. What score would that get? Or at my prior job at NOCCD, I attended trainings from campus groups such as UndocuAlly and BetNet to learn more and was better able to recognize when students were dealing with difficult issues and was able to provide them with assistance or referrals. So food for thought as you norm and move forward in the process. We're next going to touch base on the process monitor, and there will be a process monitor on every committee. So let's look through what they'll be doing, and if it's you, how you'll be handling this. So the process monitor needs to ensure a fair, consistent, and equitable process for all candidates. They need to challenge it when things happen that maybe shouldn't, whether that's comments being made or questions that shouldn't be approved, and they need to facilitate discussions. They'll be serving as the timekeeper. They'll make sure that the committee members sign the confidentiality statement at the outset, and they will also certify the results at the end. They'll remind the committee to only evaluate candidates on the interview performance, report any issues to HR, and certify EEO compliance at the end of the search. At the initial meeting, we need the process monitor to review the confidentiality and expectations. It's the Vegas rules. What happens here stays here. Each committee member will sign and upload the forms to Teams, as well as give a verbal acknowledgement that they understand. They want to make the committee aware of the conflict of interest clause. Committee members are required to disclose connections and personal relationships with candidates. We also want to remind committee members not to Google candidates or search for them on social media. We know it can be tempting, but we are going to refrain from doing so. Let's talk about conflict of interest. Actual or apparent conflicts should be reported to Human Resources immediately. These are things like relationship to an applicant, a very close connection, a friendship, dislike of an applicant that renders someone unable to fairly or neutrally assess a candidate, or having a financial relationship with somebody. Not disclosing a potential conflict of interest can result in an allegation of unfair hiring practice. A question that we get a lot is that when there's an internal candidate, and a lot of people on the committee know them simply because this person has worked at Cerritos College, or maybe it's a small community and they've worked with this person at another college. Simply knowing someone or having worked with them is typically not enough to make a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest that this slide is talking about is going to be things that you're related to somebody, you're dating somebody, the person has been your best friend since 3rd grade, those sort of things. Working with someone, having a professional friendly relationship one is not going to be enough to tip the scales on this. Other things to consider for the process monitor. Ensure the process follows all the procedures. Make sure all committee members are at all meetings. Confirm the rubric, the norming, has been developed and approved. You need to determine if there is a minimum qualified subcommittee, and must only assess on what the minimum qualifications are in the job postings. Be mindful of power disparities and remind the committee members that everyone has their own vote. So we have a lot of committees where there's a manager or 2 on the committee, and there are classified or confidential employees who may report to those people. Everyone has their own vote. Applicant selection meeting. The process monitor has a large role here as well. They need to ensure the committee reviews, scores, and discusses any significant discrepancies. This is such an example of this is why someone scored an applicant much lower or higher than the rest of the committee. And again, as we talked about earlier, committee members can change their scores if they are compelled to, but cannot be forced to. And by compelled, I mean you feel compelled to change it. Somebody made a great argument. You're right, I'm going to change the score. They also need to ensure the committee determines a cutoff regarding passing and not passing scores. Best way to do that is to look for natural point breaks in those. The top scoring candidates should be selected for interviews. As a committee, it's a good idea to consider what you're going to do if an applicant declines an interview. Do you want to have one or two people that are backups in case people drop out? Or are the people you're sending forward to interviews the only people you wish to interview? There are additional resources for process monitors. You can talk to the HR staff, view our website. Additional information can be obtained through the DEOC committee or the website. Or you can simply review Title V, those are the relevant sections to the search committee process, to answer all your questions about being a process monitor and the regulations regarding it. If you have any questions regarding what was in today's presentation, next steps, or how you could become a process monitor, please feel free to contact me. I can be reached at emiles@cerritos.edu. And I thank you for watching today's presentation and appreciate your participation in the Cerritos College Search Committee process.